Steve Lappas, CBS Sports College basketball color commentator. He was on site for the national title game in San Antonio last night. He joins us on the program. Good to see you again, Coach. Let me start at the end of the game and then maybe work our way back. The play that was called and Florida knowing what that play was going to be. Was that the collision that we had?
Yeah, and that also, and really Houston's execution on the play. I just watched it again for the third time. They didn't screen anybody on that play. It was just, and normally, let's face it, Kelvin Sampson's a tremendous coach. They execute very well. But on that last play, they didn't execute anything. And that's why, Florida was able to come out and get to Emmanuel Sharp. But if he shot fakes there's a good chance Clayton runs by him and he gets a shot off. Instead, he tried to shoot it right away. Kid makes a mistake in that situation. It happens. But, the big thing, Dan, was they had 5 turnovers in the first 38 minutes and 40 seconds of that game. And the last 120, they had 4 turnovers.
Yeah.
So the execution in the last 2 minutes was bad.
As a former coach, and I brought this up, and maybe I'm thinking that this is what happens, but if I'm going to face you and it's a big game, I have to know, what do you do? What's your go-to play with the game on the line? Like, I have to figure out, what do you love to do? And every team has a play that they love to go to. And I'm wondering, did Houston have a stock play that they love to go to, and Florida did their research, scouting, and knew what it was going to be?
I think Houston has a couple. They ran that one for Emmanuel Sharp. They have a couple for LJ Cryer. Those are the guys that he considers their 2 closers. They also have a play where they can go inside to Juwan Roberts. So, again, I think on that last play, because, the other thing about this, Dan, it's a 1-day prep. So there's only so much you can give those kids in 1 day to get ready for that game. I think that was, obviously, Florida did a great job. I would say it was more a lack of execution on Houston's part than great defense on Florida's part. Though obviously they played good defense on it, but I think Houston really just messed it up.
Yeah, that's a great point. I also brought up, this was during the regular season, maybe it was the SEC tournament, and I said that if you win the SEC, it's like winning the national championship. And Florida was ready for this because, and Duke wasn't, but I think that's because of the conference that you play in, that every single night, Florida knew that they were in for a battle. 4 of those games that they won in the tournament, they trailed by at least 6 points in the second half. Duke wasn't in that, and maybe this is a leap that I'm making, but it did feel like a battle-tested team in a great conference, and that was the difference for Florida.
That's not a leap at all, Dan. You're 100% right. I mean, Duke's average margin of victory this year was 21 points a game. They were in very few close games that came down to the wire. These kids, they were a young team now. Granted, the 2 freshmen, Knipple and Flagg, they played well. But in the last couple of minutes, they didn't have the same legs as they had throughout the game, coming up against a team that's so tough and so physical like Houston was. So I couldn't agree with you more. Them not being in the pressure cooker of the league that the Big 12 and the SEC were, definitely made a difference to Duke in that game without question.
We had Gino Auriemma on yesterday. We had Dan Hurley on yesterday. Now, they're both facing the transfer portal in different ways because Gino doesn't really have to worry about this. Whereas Dan Hurley goes, this is crazy. But then Gino said, imagine if you had free agency during Super Bowl week. That's what you have with the free agency in college basketball. What would be your remedy for this moving forward?
First of all, you got to at least start it after the tournament because, it started 2 weeks ago. The transfer portal was open. So to have it open when some people are still playing is ridiculous. And, I don't know long term of where we're going with this, whether, kids have to be committed for 2 years, whether there's going to be some kind of a salary cap. This is like nuts. And, as you know, in pro leagues, there's, salary caps, contracts. Here it's free agency every year. I'm glad I'm not in it right now, to be honest with you. And, to be faced with this as a coach, to be worried about whether the guys you have are coming back, that would have to drive you nuts. So something's got to give. This is not sustainable, I don't think.
Gino Auriemma also brought up, he says, yes, I have 12 national titles. But if I was coaching in the men's, or we had to abide by the men's rules, Diana Taurasi's one and done. Brianna Stewart would be one and done. Maya Moore would be one and done. So if you were going to look at the model that women's basketball has and you put that with the men, John Wooden had all those players who stayed. Coach K for a long period of time had guys who stayed. Who do you think could have benefited the most with the talent they had if they had to stay, or everybody was staying at least 3 years, maybe 4 years?
Probably John Calipari at Kentucky.
Yeah.
I mean, who recruited better freshmen that were NBA players than him? If he had those guys, think about the team that won it in 2012 or 14, I forget. That team was, and they if those guys come back, he's probably going to win 2 or 3 more with those guys. So I think that, and that's one of the greatest. I'm good friends with Gino. So somebody asked me, is Gino going to retire? I said, why should he retire? He's got the best job in the world. He gets the best class, and he knows they're going to be there for 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you feel for John Shire. I'm not saying he's not going to get a great class next year. He already has. But he had this generational talent. He's up 6 points with 30 seconds to go and didn't win it. I have some games that I'm taking to my grave. That's one that John Shire is going to take to his.
We always go, who won it? Did somebody win it or somebody lose it? Like in that situation, and I know you're in the coaching fraternity there, but Duke collapsed. Duke lost that game. Houston took advantage, but I can only take advantage if you allow me to take advantage.
No question, Dan. I mean, that's how you have to look at it. First of all, they couldn't get the ball in bounds. They had the same guy. One guy, I forget who was taking it out. Sion James was taking it out, and he was having trouble getting it in. They called timeout. He's still the guy who's going to get it in bounds. They changed their formation. They put a formation where they had 4 guys within like 15 feet of each other with 4 defenders. Yeah, I think that they definitely gave it away. Yes, Houston took advantage. Houston made the plays. They got the offensive rebound dunk. Yes. But Duke definitely, and John Shire knows that. And that's why it's going to eat him up, just like it's going to eat up Kelvin Sampson, that on those last 2 possessions, they don't get a shot. You feel, all right, we get a shot, we miss, we run something good, we miss it. We miss it. Okay, fine. But to not get a shot, that's the thing that eats you up.
What's the worst way to lose?
I mean, the worst way to lose is that's why I felt bad for both Kelvin Sampson and John Shire. Those were 2 really bad ways to lose because you felt like it was on you. You had this game won. Both those teams, it's one of, I had games in my career where when the game ended, I said, how did we lose that? And I also had games where I said, how did we win that? So, I mean, it does work both ways. And I think both those games, Kelvin Sampson has to say, how did we lose? And John Shire has to say, how did we lose? So when you don't execute, don't get a chance, and you give things away, you don't get beat. Like you said, Duke, they gave it away. They didn't get beat. Yeah, they got beat, but they gave it away. They gave the opportunity. It wasn't back and forth. They made one more shot than us. We lost. That's it.
Okay, but if you're Houston, you don't get a shot off, or you're Houston and you don't box out Lorenzo Charles against NC State. Which way is more painful for you if you're coaching?
I think it's more. I think in the Lorenzo Charles thing was a little bit of luck because it's an air ball, and it's not the easiest thing to box out on an air ball. Don't get me wrong. He should have been. There should have been a body on him, but that was like a fluke. That's one there that you say it couldn't hit the rim. If the shot hits the rim, that doesn't happen. So you say things like that. I think it's worse when you just give it away like these guys did.
Playing in a dome, I remember the first time I shot hoops in a dome, and man, was it an optical illusion. Like, it took a while with the depth perception there. And I know that it's here to stay because the NCAA wants to get 60, 70,000 in there to make money. But that adjustment period, does that still go on for these, major university players?
It's not as talked about as much now that we've been playing in domes for so long. But certainly when it first started, whatever it was, 12, 13 years ago, it was a factor. And it gets talked about a little bit. I know we talked about it with Kelvin Sampson. We were at the Indianapolis Regional with him. And, he just felt like we got to get these guys in here. They're going to shoot as many as they can. But both teams are in the same situation. So you try not to talk about it.
Great to talk to you, Coach. And we look forward to next year so we can have you back on to talk college basketball.
I love being on with you, Dan. Thank you very much.
That's Steve Lappas. He coached at Manhattan and Villanova and UMass and works for CBS during the tournament.